We are soon back to the world of Wicked, as part 1 may have set up Glinda and Fiyero's love story, with the second part of the movie continuing in that narrative, but there's a great reason why the one for Fiyero will always be Elphaba. Not many viewers saw the subtle signs in Wicked Part 1 that already mapped out Elphaba and Fiyero's destined love story, but they were hiding in plain sight the entire time. And now that we know what's coming in Wicked Part 2, these clues make perfect sense and reveal exactly why their relationship was always meant to be the endgame. From the very first moment Fiyero arrived at Shiz University, dancing through life without a care in the world, it seemed like he was just another shallow prince destined for Glinda's perfect fairy tale ending. But beneath all that carefree charm and rebellious attitude, there were deeper layers that only Elphaba could see and understand. And that's precisely where their love story begins to make sense, because Fiyero could also see beyond Elphaba's skin color instantly. When Fiyero first encounters Elphaba, something fascinating happens that sets the tone for everything that follows. Although he notices her green skin, that surprise fades quickly without any sign of disgust or rejection, which is different to how everyone else at Shiz initially reacted to her arrival. What truly catches him off guard isn't her appearance, but her complete indifference to his charm. Fiyero is a prince who's used to having people fall over themselves to gain his attention, and suddenly he got to meet someone who couldn't care less about him, as Elphaba sees right through the performance he's been putting on for everyone else. This rejection intrigues him in ways he doesn't fully understand yet. His ego drives him to try harder, to figure out what makes this girl so immune to the spell he casts on everyone around him. However, this isn't really about getting Elphaba to be interested in him, even though those elements are certainly there. What's happening beneath the surface is much more significant. He's meeting someone who operates outside the rules of the superficial world he's grown tired of navigating. Their other encounters continue to set them up, and the Ozdust ballroom scene becomes the turning point where everything shifts into focus. This is where Fiyero stops being intrigued and starts falling, because he witnesses something in Elphaba that mirrors his own deepest struggles, while also showing him what courage actually looks like. Standing there in the center of that humiliating prank, with everyone staring, Elphaba doesn't run. She could have fled in shame, but instead she stays and dances with a strength that leaves him stunned. Now, when Fiyero tells Glinda that Elphaba doesn't care what people think, and Glinda corrects him by saying she does care but hides it well, that moment becomes even more powerful, as it hits Fiyero like a revelation, because he suddenly sees himself reflected in Elphaba's situation. She does care what people think, just like he does, but she dares to stand in her truth anyway. This realization transforms his admiration from fascination to genuine respect and connection. Elphaba shows him what it means to be vulnerable yet strong, to care deeply about others' opinions while refusing to let that caring dictate his actions. In that ballroom, watching her dance alone but unbroken, Fiyero sees who he wants to become. Someone brave enough to show his authentic self instead of hiding behind the mask everyone expects him to wear. Their dynamic becomes even clearer during the lion cub rescue, where Elphaba demonstrates that she truly sees him. When she calls out his pretense of being shallow and self-absorbed, his defensive reaction confirms everything. She's hit the mark perfectly, and his stunned expression when she tells him he's clearly unhappy reveals that perhaps no one has ever seen past his carefully constructed exterior before. Also, the music Dancing Through Life goes beyond its melody. While everyone else gets swept up in the celebration, they miss the underlying message about emptiness that Fiyero is actually expressing. Only Elphaba picks up on this deeper meaning, recognizing the pain hidden beneath his princely charm. This shared understanding comes from their similar experiences with the world's superficiality, though from different angles. Fiyero has been raised in privilege where everything is handed to him based on status rather than genuine connection. People obsess over him without knowing who he really is, making all their attention feel worthless. Meanwhile, Elphaba faces rejection and isolation because of her appearance, but she also sees through the fake pleasantries and social games that dominate their world. Both characters understand that society demands people play roles that don't reflect their authentic selves. Fiyero plays the carefree prince while battling internal emptiness, and Elphaba will eventually embrace the wicked label society forces on her despite her good intentions. They recognize that sometimes you have to keep dancing through life even when it feels meaningless, a perspective that creates an immediate soul-level connection between them. Interestingly, what makes their relationship so compelling is how they validate each other's authentic selves. When Elphaba calls out Fiyero's unhappiness, she's not mocking him, but seeing him, perhaps for the first time in his life. His initial defense melts away when she takes his hand, showing that her observation comes from understanding, not judgment. Similarly, Fiyero never makes fun of Elphaba like everyone else has, treating her with a respect that she's rarely experienced. Also, their quick partnership in rescuing the lion cub demonstrates their shared compassion and willingness to act on their principles, even when it's dangerous or inconvenient. The tenderness in that scene reveals something beautiful about their emerging feelings. Neither has experienced this kind of genuine understanding before, where someone sees their vulnerability and responds with care rather than exploitation. Elphaba treats Fiyero the way she's always hoped to be treated, with acceptance and love for who he really is, rather than the performance he puts on. For Fiyero, this level of authentic intimacy becomes overwhelming in the best possible way. He's never been seen or touched with such genuine affection, where someone wants to comfort rather than use him. The fact that he needs to step away shows how deeply this connection affects him, as he's discovering what real love feels like for the first time. Their relationship works because they don't try to change each other or demand impossible transformations. Instead, they offer something far more valuable: true acceptance and understanding. Elphaba doesn't need Fiyero to become more serious or intellectual, and he doesn't need her to become more conventional or acceptable to society. They love each other as they are, flaws and strengths included. This foundation of mutual recognition and acceptance creates the perfect setup for their future together in the second film. They've already established that they can see past each other's defenses and offer the kind of love that heals rather than demands. When the world tries to tear them apart or force them into roles they don't want, they'll have this unshakable connection to get through them. However, their love story takes some seriously complicated turns, making their eventual reunion even more meaningful in the second part. The political situation in Oz creates impossible situations that test everything they've built together, starting with Fiyero's new role as captain of the Wizard's Guards. Just as Elphaba becomes a public enemy, branded as the Wicked Witch of the West, Fiyero finds himself technically responsible for tracking her down and bringing her in. Of course, anyone paying attention knows his real motivation has nothing to do with duty or loyalty to the wizard. He's desperately searching for her because he's completely fallen for this woman, and the heated tension between them when they finally reconnect makes it crystal clear that time and circumstances haven't affected their feelings one bit. If anything, being forced apart has only intensified what they mean to each other. Things get even messier when Madame Morrible decides to interfere with Fiyero's personal life. Without any warning or consultation, she announces his engagement to Glinda to all of Oz, leaving him blindsided by a political arrangement he never agreed to. The Broadway version shows him responding with resigned indifference, but you can bet the movie will dig deeper into how this betrayal affects him. This forced engagement represents everything wrong with the superficial world both he and Elphaba have learned to see through. It's all about appearances, political advantage, and maintaining the status quo rather than genuine connection or choice. The fact that it's forced upon him just as he's found real love with Elphaba makes the situation even more painful and complicated. When Fiyero and Elphaba finally reunite, their declaration of love through song becomes one of those moments that makes everything else worth it. They've both been through growth and separation, yet their connection remains stronger than ever. However, their happiness gets cut short when Fiyero's loyalty to Elphaba puts him directly in harm's way. By helping her escape the Wizard's Guards and offering his family castle as a hideout, he essentially becomes a wanted criminal as well. From the Broadway story, the moment where guards drag Fiyero away triggers something desperate in Elphaba that shows just how deeply she loves him. Watching the man she's chosen being taken because he chose her sends her into a panic that leads to one of the most heartbreaking moments in their story. In her attempt to protect him with magic, she accidentally transforms him into the scarecrow we know from the original tale. This twist adds layers of tragedy to their love story because instead of protecting him, she's essentially trapped the person she loves most in a completely different form. While his adventure with Dorothy, the Cowardly Lion, and the Tin Man happens off the Broadway Broadway stage, devoted fans of the original Wizard of Oz story know this separation is temporary. The Scarecrow eventually makes his way back to Elphaba when Dorothy's bucket of water ends the Wicked Witch's reign of terror. But here's where their story gets interesting. Elphaba's death scene is entirely faked by her. She's clever enough to use the rumors about water being her weakness to stage an elaborate fake moment that convinces everyone, including Dorothy, that she's been destroyed. It's the perfect escape plan that allows her to disappear from the public while everyone believes the threat is over. Meanwhile, Glinda returns to Oz to take down both the wizard and Madame once she understands their true nature. This gives Fiyero and Elphaba the space they need for their secret reunion, where they can finally be together without the entire world hunting them down. Their final scene together on Broadway becomes beautifully touching because it reveals love that transcends physical form. When Elphaba basically tells Fiyero that his transformation into the Scarecrow doesn't change how she feels about him, it reinforces everything their relationship has always been about: seeing and loving the person beyond appearances or circumstances. Their decision to leave Oz together represents the ultimate freedom from the superficial world that never understood either of them. They can finally stop performing for others and live authentically, even if it means everyone else believes they're gone forever. The bittersweetness comes from knowing that Glinda, who genuinely cared about both of them, has to live believing her friends are deceased. However, their sacrifice ensures that Oz can move towards something better while they build a life based on the real connection they've always shared.